Um,
All right.
any announcement to be made before we start?
Announcement is that we very greatly appreciate your lessons. And the last one, we missed the first one of this, but it was really good. And this one looks good too. I read it through and it looks like I might be able to get it. Sort of. Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
it is not long, so but
we
it
very
contains.
much enjoy the whole process, you
Okay.
know, very, 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 very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody else too, for being part of it.
I'd like to make a quick announcement. KTBC is a sister center with Tim and Norba Ling in Santa Fe. And so being a member of KTBC, you can automatically take the classes at Tim and Norba Ling. And so check out the website. There's really dynamic programming. It's a really robust schedule. And every day of the week from 7 to 7:30 a.m. is a morning guided meditation. And every evening from 9 to 9:30 p.m. is the Vajrasattva purification meditation. And then starting on Tuesdays and Thursdays, starting October 10th, from 1 to 1:30 will be an afternoon meditation, a Lam Rim meditation, and they're each half hour. So check out the calendar and please join.
Oh, yeah,
Thank
you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
So again, we will start as usual, quieting your mind by watching the breath for a few moments. Yeah. Oh, so did you hear when I was leading the? No.
No, sorry.
Okay, it's okay. So I think you did by yourself. So we can do the prayer. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the four destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and eight good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide to human beings to be tamed, teacher of God and human beings, to you, the complete and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya plane, I prostrate, make offering, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the four destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of God and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed and standard destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offering, and go for it. To the founder, the endowed and standard destroyer, the one gone beyond, the four destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of God and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed and standard destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offering, go for refuge. 사시베게 중심에도 다리라 렌시 인데게 바데 상계신도 이데오와이 요근 나마다신라 I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to listen to the Dharma, may I become Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye Shodan Soge Sonam La, Chanju Bado Dane Ke, Nage Shuje Gibe Sonam Ke, Dola Penje Sange Duva. Sangye Shodan Soge Sonam La, Chanju Bado Dane Ke, Nage Shuje Gibe Sonam Ke, Dola Penje Sange Duva. So I think last week we completed the title and then the homage to all the gurus, and then the promise to compose, and then we were in the second persuading to listen, and we spoke a little bit about that, and then as I mentioned, last week when we listened, as for the students, then you need to have the unbiased mind listening and have the intelligence to make the right judgment. And then the one I said last time I didn't remember was interest. So even you might have the unbiased mind, even you might have the intelligence to make right and wrong, because sometimes the teacher can also make a mistake. So when the teacher make a mistake, that you are able to, with your own mind, able to judge whether that was a mistake or not, and then interest. Even you have that, if you don't have interest, then of course, then you wouldn't study, you wouldn't learn, you wouldn't practice. And so the interest, so those are the three things. And so those who are not attached to the pleasure of cycling samsara, and who start to make freedom and endowment meaningful, so the practitioner who is, who have seen the nature of samsara and the nature of samsara as being a nature of suffering, and therefore wanting to free from the samsara and the suffering of samsara, and therefore who strive for freedom, to make freedom and endowment meaningful. And the way to make meaningful, the best way to make meaningful is to practice the bodhicitta, to practice the Mahayana path that fulfill the well-being of not only oneself, but all sentient beings, others and oneself. And the gateway, and who entrust themselves to the path, pleasing the victorious one. And so you fortunate one, listen with a calm mind. So those who have the imprint and karma from the past to be able to listen, to be able to study and practice, they are the fortunate one. And so those fortunate one, here, Lama Tsongkhapa requesting to listen with calm mind, as I mentioned before, that calm mind here, referring with the three, with the interest and totally listening, with the interest, fully listening, and with the intentions, motivations, and to be able to use your intelligence as well, and unbiased minds. And so again, another one way of understanding this is those who are not attached to the pleasure of the cycling. The first line that shows explain the renunciations, who strive to make freedom endowment meaningful. That explain the bodhicitta mind, because that is what make your life more meaningful when you are able to practice the bodhicitta mind. And who entrust themselves to the path pleasing the victorious one. That explain the emptiness, the wisdom relies on the emptiness, because it is that path, the view, the understanding of emptiness is the view that pleased the victorious of the Buddha. Because once we have that view and that wisdom, then one is able to free from the samsara permanently, fully. And so that is pursuing. So up to here, then, what it explained is yeah, I think so it is pursuing to listen. And then from next, it comes to the actual main script, the main text, the main body of the text. And so the main body of the text, then it can come into 4 outlines: the practice of renunciations, explanation and practice of renunciations, and then the bodhicitta and the wisdom, realizing the emptiness or the emptiness. And then once you have those understanding, encouraging to engage in the practice, So first we study and learn about what is renunciations, what is bodhicitta, what is emptiness. And once you have studied and learned, then it's not enough just understanding intellectually, but then you have to understand experientially, and to do that, then you have to practice. So the last one, then Lama Tsongkhapa, encouraging and to practice. So from those four kind of main outlines. And within the bodhicitta, within the renunciation, the first one of the 3 principal aspects of path, there are 3, within that 3 outlines. Why we need to practice the renunciations? Why we need to practice the renunciations? How to practice, how to develop the renunciations? And what is the measure of having cultivated renunciation? How do we know that we have developed renunciations? How to check, evaluate, or measure it? So from 3 outline of, and that you same with all of 3, all 3 path or the practice. So first, the purpose of generating renunciation, why we need to generate the renunciation. So that is where. Without the complete intentions, definitely to be free from cycling. So in Tibetan word for the renunciation is Nyejung. And the Nyejung is actually, the translation here is definitely to be free from the cyclic existence. That is the actually, and of course, because sometimes I think the word renunciation can be misunderstood sometimes, the term, the way it is used in normal sense, and then maybe sometimes when so without a complete intention, definitely to be free from cyclic existence, or in other words here, when you use without the renunciations, there is no way to pacify attachment, seeking pleasurable effect in the ocean of cyclic existence. So if you don't have renunciations or the intention to definitely free from the cyclic existence, if you don't have that, then there is no way to pacify the attachment to samsaric pleasure and samsaric experiences. We will be very much attached to samsaric pleasure and samsaric experiences, and not only and because we are being attached to samsara pleasure, then there is no way that we can free from the samsara. So also by craving for cyclic existence in body, beings are continually bound. Therefore, at the very beginning, seek renunciations. So without the renunciation, one will not develop the wish to achieve liberation or freedom from the samsara. If you don't have renunciation, we wouldn't have the wish or the intentions to achieve liberation or nirvana or freedom. Not only we will not have the wish or the intention to achieve liberation or nirvana, but we will not have that if we don't have renunciation, but also we will be attached to samsara and samsaric experience and pleasure. And if we are attached to samsaric pleasure, samsaric experience, and samsara itself, then we will continue to be bound in the samsara. And we will continue to circle in the samsara. And if we continue to be bound in the samsara, and if we continue to circle in the samsara, we are bound to experience suffering continuously, endlessly. And therefore, we need to develop the renunciation at the very beginning. Therefore, that is why we need the renunciations, so that we can have, strong wish to achieve liberation, nirvana, and also that we don't get attached to samsaric experience, samsaric pleasure. So that is why we need to have renunciations. So here is cyclic existence or samsara, that is. So what is samsara? Samsara is the aggregate that continue to transmigrate within the six realm again and again and again. That is what samsara means, when they are aggregates, endlessly continue to transmigrate within the samsaric, the six realms continuously. Why are we, continue to circle in the samsara or six realms? Because of the karma and the delusions. Because of the karma and delusions. As long as we have the karma and the delusions, we will continue to have this aggregate that will continue to circle in the samsara, circle into the 6 realms, and thereby experience suffering. Mm. Mm. So if some of the teachers or commentaries or Lama Tsongkhapa said, some people think we don't need renunciation. If we can have bodhicitta, that is enough. Sometimes there's misunderstanding where some people think what we need is bodhicitta. But here, Lama Tsongkhapa says, and many of the other great masters says, without the renunciation, you cannot have real bodhicitta. Without the true renunciation, you cannot have real bodhicitta. Therefore, in order to cultivate the bodhicitta, you need the renunciations. How is that? Because if we are comfortable with the samsara and if we are comfortable in samsara and with the samsara, because we don't have any renunciations towards the samsara and samsaric experience, and if we are okay and happy and comfortable with the samsara and samsaric experience, then when you see someone who is in samsara, you wouldn't feel compassion for, because you don't see their suffering. Because you don't understand being samsara is a suffering. Do you get it? Because you don't understand being in samsara is painful. Being in samsara is suffering with your own experience. And if you don't understand that with yourself, then you wouldn't feel others are suffering just by being in samsara. And therefore you wouldn't feel compassion for them. And therefore you wouldn't develop the bodhicitta. Just give you one example. To give you one example, it is easy for us to feel compassion at the moment for someone who is, suffering, gross sufferings, in terms of what we call suffering and pain, someone who is very sick, someone who is, wounded, whether it's a human being, whether it's animals, someone who is suffering sickness, someone who is starving, someone who doesn't have, enough to eat, enough to drink, someone who doesn't have enough to support themselves in terms of health, someone who doesn't have shelters. When you see those pain, suffering, it is easy for us to feel compassion for them temporarily. But those who are rich, who seems healthy, who seems to have power, fame, it is hard to feel compassion for them. It's hard to feel compassion for them, isn't it? We don't feel so much compassion for them. It's not easy to feel compassion for them. Sometimes we get upset and angry with them. Why we cannot feel compassion for them? Because we cannot see and feel their pain and suffering. That is it. If we can see and feel their pain and suffering, we will naturally feel compassion. Easy to feel. It will be easy to feel compassion if we can see and feel their pain and suffering. And so, So we haven't seen their state as being a suffering. That is why we cannot feel compassion for them. But if you see, they are, as long as they are in samsara, regardless whether you are wealthy or poor, whether you are healthy or unhealthy, whether you have power or powerless, whether you have fame or not fame, everyone is suffering because of being in samsara. Some of us, some of the people are suffering physically, some of them are suffering emotionally, mentally. Sometimes we cannot see the pain and suffering of someone who is experiencing suffering emotionally and mentally. So we think they are okay. They are having their life is great. You see, from outside, it looks great. They have a lot of power, they have a lot of fame, they have a reputation, they have a lot of friends, they have a lot of money. It seems they seems to have good health, and then it seems, oh, their life is great, isn't it? We feel like their life is great, but we don't see what is going in their mind, emotionally, mentally. If we see that, if we understand that, sometimes they are experiencing more suffering than those who are suffering physical pain. That is why a lot of those rich people and fame people, celebrities, why they take all these depression medicines and why they die, why they can take a suicide, you know? If they are happy, if they don't have any problems, emotionally, mentally, why would they do that? Why would they take their life, their own life? Why would they have all this depression and relying on antidepressant medicine and then overdose of antidepressant medicine that take their lives? It clearly shows they were not happy. Even though outside, externally, they seems to be in good conditions, but they were having emotional, mental problems, whatever that might be, you know. Fears, worries, anxieties, you know, all different kind of emotions. If we can see that, then you can feel compassion. Even though outside they seem good, but inside, because they are suffering so much, when you see it, when you feel it, then you can feel compassion for them. And the reason why we're unable to see is, again, you know, we haven't really understood the true nature of samsara. True nature of samsara. If you really understand true nature of samsara, and true nature of samsara is suffering. The suffering doesn't have to be physical, doesn't have to be even sometimes emotional. But as long as you are, or your life, or your existence, or your being is under the influence and control of the delusion karma, that itself is painful. That itself is samsara. Isn't it? When we become slave of our own karma and slave of our own delusions, that is suffering. When we ourselves become prisoner of our own delusions, that is suffering. And any sentient beings, rich, poor, educated, uneducated, powerful, unpowerful, whatever, as long as their life, as long as their being is controlled by their own delusions and karma, as long as they are slave of their own delusions, as long as they are prisoner of their own delusion, is a suffering. So before we can feel that for others, first we have to feel that for ourselves. How is painful, how is suffering when our mind and when we are when we become the prisoner of our own delusion, karma, when we have no control, but some other factors such as karma is controlling our life. We want to go this way, our karma take us this way, isn't it? In terms of job, in terms of our health, in terms of our relationship, things doesn't go the way we want. We want to go this way, and then situations take us in the different directions. Karma, there's another force, something force that is kind of driving our life in certain directions. So that seems we don't have 100% control, total control at this point. And then delusions, there's no doubt about that, I don't want to get angry, upset, but anger and upset arises. I don't want to get a strong attachment, but attachment arises. Not because I want. And when those attachment and anger arises, it's painful. So basically, when you become your own prisoner of your own delusions and slave of delusion, that itself is suffering, and it is painful. So first you have to understand that from your own experience with your own self. Once you have that understanding, then you apply that to others. Oh, others are also like myself. They are also they are also the prisoner of the karma, the prisoner of their delusions and slave of their delusion. Then you can feel compassion for them, because with your own experience, you see how painful it is. So that is why, in order to have a true compassion to all sentient beings and to be able to develop bodhicitta towards all sentient beings, why we need to have the renunciation first. By understanding samsara is not pleasant. Samsara is not a desirable. Samsara is a deception. Samsara and samsara experience, it present as something desirable, pleasant at the beginning, but then it turns out it's not desirable, it's painful. So, so we have to understand that with our own experience. And so that is why we need to have that renunciations, Without that renunciation, there is no great compassion to all sentient beings. And without the great compassion to all sentient beings, there is no bodhicitta. That is why Lama Tsongkhapa here present the renunciations before the bodhicitta. Also in Lamrim, that is why the renunciation comes into the middle scope practice before the great scope practice that explains bodhicitta. So that is why Adisha, Lama Adisha, the great Adisha, made a comments. It seems like a little bit sarcastic, but he said, you only Tibetans know how to develop bodhicitta without great compassion and loving kindness. So that is how he said, he said, use in our tradition, in our Indian tradition, you cannot develop bodhicitta without the great compassion, without the loving kindness, without cultivating, developing that. But you Tibetans seems to be, it is only you who seems to know that, how to develop bodhicitta without the great compassion and that. Basically saying, there are some practitioners at that time who seems to proclaim, see that you can develop bodhicitta without great compassion, you know. And so that is where, and without the great compassion, and in order to have great compassion, you need to have renunciations. First, when you think about that to yourself, you feel it's undesirable, painful. And then when you relate that to others who is going through the same thing, then you can see, oh, they must be going so much pain, suffering. So you feel, you understand, you feel. And so that is why, so that is why we need to develop the bodhicitta mind. And then secondly, how to develop the bodhicitta mind. So here, how to generate the renunciation, not bodhicitta, sorry, renunciation. We are talking about renunciation. How to generate renunciation. Within that, there are two, you know, in order to generate or cultivate the renunciation, you need to overcome the appearance of this life, or attachment to this life and experience of this life, and attachment to overcome the attachment to the experience and pleasure of future life or next life. And so within that, the first ones here, freedom and endowment are difficult to find, and life has no time to spare. And by gaining familiarity with that, attractions or attachment to the appearance of this life will be reversed. So then through that meditation and practice, you will be able to overcome the attachment and grasping to the pleasure of this life. So by meditating on precious human rebirth and by meditating on impermanence. So here when you say, freedom and endowment are difficult to find. So that explains the precious human rebirth. Okay, precious human rebirth with the freedom and endowment, 10 freedom and 8 freedom and 10 endowment. So freedom here, sometimes some translations they translate leisure, freedom or leisure. The freedom or leisure to practice the Dharma. Being free from the obstacle to practice the Dharma. And endowments are those, 10 endowments that are the conducive condition to practice the Dharma. Not only you are free from all the obstacles to practice the Dharma, but you have also, we have also gathered all the conducive condition to practice the Dharma. So those are the endowments. And such precious life, human life is precious in general. But when we talk about here precious human life, then we talk about special precious human life that is endowed with 18 qualities. And of course, without going into details, compared to animal realms, human life is more precious because, we have much more freedom than animals. We have, especially to practice the Dharma, And then within the humans, not everyone's has, same opportunity to practice the Dharma. Some of them have obstacles because of their disabilities, physically, mentally. So they have more challenges to practice the Dharma. Some of them, even they don't have those challenges, they are born or they have to live in a place where there's no freedom to practice the Dharma. Not every country in the world give you the freedom to practice the Dharma. In some countries, there's no freedom to practice what you want. Practice the Dharma. And even you are in a place where there's freedom to practice Dharma, some places, there's no access to the Dharma. There's no center, there's no teachers, there's no sanghas. So therefore, you know, when we look from all this perspective, we have to feel very grateful, appreciative of our life, even though sometimes it can be challenging. Sometimes even though it might not be so easy due to certain situations in our life, in certain time, but we always have to be aware and conscious that we are so fortunate, despite whatever challenges we are facing now, despite whatever difficulty that we are facing now, we are so fortunate and so grateful compared to so many other human beings and other sentient beings that we have this incredible opportunity to practice the Dharma. Incredible opportunity to practice the Dharma, you know. And such precious human life is not easy to find again and again. It's very rare. It's very rare in terms of example, very rare in terms of nature, very rare in terms of creating the cause and conditions. You know, in terms of examples, you know, Buddha give an example, you know, probably many of you have heard, you know, it's like a blind tortoise that's living in the oceans, under the oceans. And then on the surface, there is a yoke that is being kind of, you know, blown by the wind here and there. Every 100 years, the tortoise come up, and the chances of that yoke going in that tortoise is, you can't say impossible, but extremely difficult. You know, in terms of nature, you know, compared to the animal realms, human is rare. There's less human than animals. Within the human beings, you know, there are less who have the opportunity to practice the Dharma. And within those who have opportunity to practice the Dharma, there are very little who have interest in Dharma. And among those who have interest in Dharma, is very little who actually practice the Dharma. You know, I've seen many people who have interest in Dharma, but they say they have really interest, but they somehow, they cannot get a time or opportunity to study and practice. You know, they think maybe I will do next month, next year, and that next month, it never comes. And life has gone for many. So even those who have interest, some of them who have interest, even them, they struggle. They struggle to practice. So therefore, when we took from that, you know, so we are very fortunate, you know, it's very rare to be able to have all these conditions. Not only have interest, not only all the other conditions, but we have the interest. Not only we have the interest, we continue to study, practice as much as we can. So with that, even sometimes our practice is not so great. You know, sometimes our practice is good, sometimes our practice is not so good. Even in those times, we have to rejoice. We have to feel grateful, thankful, gratitude, and rejoice that at least I'm able to practice. At least, even though the practice is not great, but still I'm practicing. At least I'm trying. Is important, okay? And so, and how precious, how much precious and valuable such precious human life is, because if we utilize it properly, you know, we can achieve happiness of this life, we can achieve happiness of future life. With this life, we can achieve the happiness of, you know, higher rebirth futures. We can achieve happiness of liberation, individual liberation, arhat, or not only that, we can even achieve fully enlightenment. Not only we can achieve happiness of ourselves, we can actually even help to bring well-being and happiness of others as well with this human. So therefore, it's extremely precious, extremely precious. So recognizing that and contemplating and meditating on that precious human rebirth, can give us some kind of, encouragements, some kind of energy to really utilize this life to practice the Dharma. Because we have all the right conditions to practice the Dharma now. If we don't use that to practice Dharma when we have all the right conditions, how are we going to practice when all the conditions are not there? In future life, even if we are born as a human beings, what happens if we were born in a certain situation, certain families, where you wouldn't have all these conditions to practice the Dharma? So, we had all the right condition now, and therefore we have to practice now. Future, we don't know whether we will have all these conditions or not. We can hope, we can pray, but that doesn't always guarantee. We can hope and we can pray, but just by hoping and just by praying, it doesn't guarantee that we will have the same opportunity, same life with the same opportunity like we have now. But at the moment, we have all the right conditions, and therefore we have to make most of it and make our life meaningful by engaging in the practice of Dharma. And then where it says the life has no time to spare, it is explaining about how, not only is so precious, it's full of potential, but this life comes to the end. It does not last forever. So it explains our impermanent in general and death impermanent with that line. Okay. So not only the life is, this precious life is full of potentials, is rare to obtain again in the futures, rare and difficult to obtain again, and is full of precious potentials, but we need to practice. Not only we need to practice in this life, we need to practice now, immediately, without postponing it. Because, sometimes we think, I want to practice, but maybe I can practice next year. Let me take care of other things this year. But what happens if we die this year before the next year comes? We cannot guarantee that we will live next year. Of course, in our mind, we feel, I can live, but even someone who have just passed away, they feel they are going to live more than what they think. So therefore, or maybe we think, maybe after 5 years, 10 years, I can practice. I can give more time to Dharma practice, study and practice. Of course, if we have that, maybe we might be able to practice, but there's no guarantee we'll live after next 5 years, 10 years, 5 years, 1 year. Not even, we cannot guarantee, even we could be after 1 month. So with that understanding, since the death is certain, death is going to come, no one can stop death. We all have to experience death. No one has been able to escape the death. The greatest scientists who have invented some of the greatest technology, even they have not been able to escape the death. Some of the greatest doctors who have saved so many people's lives, they have not been able to save their own life at the end. The most rich persons in the world have not been able to save their life from dying, no matter how much wealth they have, no matter how much powerful they are. Even some of the most enlightened beings, including Buddha Shakyamuni, he has to face the death. So who are we to think that we will not die? So therefore, death is certain. Death is something that cannot be escaped. that we will all have the experience. Not only is sudden, but when it's going to come is so uncertain. Worst part is that it's so uncertain when it's going to come. When, where, how it is going to come is so uncertain. You know, it's so uncertain. And therefore, we have to practice before the death comes. One of the things that make us, you know, to postpone from practicing Dharma or dedicating ourselves to the Dharma is, you know, because we always feel there is time to us to practice the Dharma. That's how we always feel that way. But that can be very, very deceiving. That can be very, very deceiving, you know. And one of the reasons why we feel there is still time with us, because we feel, you know, in terms of age, because we haven't reached age, you know. In my cases, you know, probably, you know, I think maybe I could live 80s because of in my parents, grandparents, how much they live, you know, from that kind of genetics or whatever, you know, you think maybe I could live up to 80, you know, because of the age. So I still think, you know, I've still many years. Another reasons is, you know, maybe I think maybe I'm healthy now, you know, I don't seem to have any kind of, you know, health issues. Age is on my side, the health is on my side. And maybe environment seems to be quite safe environment, unlike in some other countries, places. So all of this make us to think that there will be time for us to practice. But all of these reasons can be very, very deceiving, because age cannot guarantee. You know, grandparent or grandchild or even grandchild pass before their grandparents. And many healthy people die before unhealthy people. Some of them who have been dealing with chronic disease for so many years, and then someone who seems to be absolutely fine and suddenly, boom, they could have accident, they could have heart attack suddenly. You know, you hear so many people, you know, some of them, you know, like I was in the news, you know, some of them very, when you look their body, you know, they are very healthy, you know, they do a lot of exercise, you know, and they check and the doctor say everything's fine. Suddenly they have a heart attack. Or in now a case in a virus such as COVID or any other kind of virus can attack us anytime. So being healthy doesn't guarantee that. And also being in a more, you know, safe environment doesn't guarantee it that. You know, there are people who live in a very, you know, unsafe environment, but who live more than 100 years. And there are people who live in very safe environment who die at a very young age. So none of those that we think that we are going to live more because based on all this is not true. You know, it false. It's unreliable. It can be very deceptive. And through that understanding, meditating, you know, then we come to conclusions, you know, that not only I will die, but I could die any moment. And therefore, I should practice the Dharma now without postponing it, without delaying it. So, you know, on death impermanent, you know, there are many different meditations, you know, the meditation on the 3 root and 9 reasonings and 3 conclusions. There is one particular meditation on that. Then there is meditation on, you know, on death impermanence, imagining yourself at the end of your life in the bed, and so that kind of meditations, and then meditation on the dissolutions, 8 dissolutions. So different external and internal signs that comes as we die at the end of our life gradually, So there are many different meditation in relation to the death. And so we try to meditate on death impermanence and precious human rebirth, and then together with that meditation of precious human rebirth and death impermanent, that will help us to feel more sense of urgency to practice the Dharma, the need to practice the Dharma now without postponing, the need to practice, the need for the focus being our practice. Of course, we have to do other things. We live in a world that we have to depend on many other conditions. And so we need to have those conditions, but at the same time, we cannot forget the Dharma, because that is the most important. All other things, it might help us in this life, might not help. Who knows? It's not guaranteed. Wealth doesn't guarantee you will have a better. Sometimes people have a more miserable life once they started to inherit those wealth. Have you heard about those stories? So many people where their life was where they were quite happy, and then they inherit a lot of money, and then their lives become upside and down, and then everything changed in a bad way. Also, I heard, one of the person who won lottery, millions of money, his life became miserable after he won that. Everyone's chasing him, everyone's calling him. So all things started to happen, that was not, so his life became very, very kind of, and he wish he has not won it, So that is that. You never, is wealth, money, whether it's going to make your life better and easier, or whether it's make your life more complicated, you never know. And I know even among some families, friends, their families, when they didn't have wealth, they were more happy. They didn't have much conflict among themselves. They were more harmonious. And then someone started to have more money, then there is, jealousies, and then all of that, then they started to have a kind of conflict in their relationship and more distant. And that also happens within the children as well. So, money, and not only money, fame is the same thing. Fame can destroy someone's life. A lot of celebrities, they wanted a fame at the very beginning, but once they have fame, they are trying to run away from it. They cannot run. Paparazzi are coming, even in the bathroom. You have no privacy. They are trying to come in, even in your private home. They are trying to take pictures from everywhere. Your life becomes so miserable. You have no privacy. You cannot have a good conversation. So, it ruins your happiness. So doesn't guarantee the wealth, reputations, friends. Sometimes more friends, you become too busy. Do you get it? Because you feel what do you call obliged to do a lot of things. If you think, if they invite you their birthday, if you don't go, they will be unhappy. They will be sad. They will not like you. So you have to go to their birthday. They have party. You have to. So your life become so busy that you have no peace. Less friend, you don't have to go anywhere. You have all time for yourself. You know, if you want to go to the mountains, you can go to the mountains. If you want to practice, you can practice. You know. Whereas when you have so many big families and friends, then you always have to run to do something because something is happening all the time. And you become extremely busy. So, you know, friends, wealth or money and reputation doesn't guarantee that your life will be more better, happier in this life. And definitely it can't help at the time of death. At the time of death, the money is no use, the wealth is no use, fame is no use, friends are no use because, you know, they can't help you at that point. And after death, none of them help you. After death, nothing helps. But the Dharma practice, it helps you while you are now, it helps at the time of death, it helps after the death. And so therefore, with that understanding, then we try to give more time, more energy, more resource to study and practice as much as possible. Because that is the thing that can really help us all through different stages of our life, you know. So through that, through meditation on impermanence and impermanent general and dead impermanent and pressure human rebirth, then we try to overcome any kind of attachment to any kind of, you know, pleasure of this life. So now you might be wondering, you know, if we don't have attachment to the pleasure of this life, our life would be very boring. You know, well, if you don't have attachment, you will enjoy more. If you have attachment, you enjoy less. Example, you know, just one example, then you can relate with everything. If you are attached to specific food or flavor, you enjoy enjoyment when you have that your specific food and that flavor. And if you something another flavor, then you started to complain. You don't enjoy it because you are so particular about that, because you are so attached to that particular taste, that particular flavor, and that particular. And because of that, you can only enjoy only when you have that one. Other flavors, other food, then you don't enjoy it. But someone who doesn't have any kind of that kind of attachment, any particular specific food, specific flavor, specific taste, they can enjoy and they can like all kind of food, all kind of flavor. So attachment restrict your enjoyment. When you are ever let go of that attachment, then you enjoy everything. Same with the season, you know, some people are attached to summer. Some people are attached to fall. Some people are attached to winter. And so some who are attached to the very summer, when the winter comes, it becomes miserable. They started to complain even before the winter comes. But someone who is not attached to that and who is okay with any seasons, they have more happiness, more joyfulness in their life. Winter comes, they are okay. They are more, of course, you have to prepare for that, but you are okay. You don't start complaining it before that and while it is. And summer, spring, each of them, you enjoy each of them as it is. So therefore, to think that our life will be, you know, not enjoyable. If you don't have attachment, it's totally misunderstanding. So in order to let go of attachment to this experience of this life or pleasure of this life, or the letting go of the attachment to the appearance or the pleasure of this life, then mainly is to, in this practice is mainly to getting rid of 8 worldly concerns. 8 worldly concerns. What we call 8 worldly concerns. 8 worldly concerns are, if you gain material things, wealth, you are happy. If you don't gain material wealth, then you are unhappy. If you have pleasure or happiness, you are happy. If you experience pain and suffering, you are unhappy. If you have, if you are praised, you are happy. If you are criticized, you are unhappy. If you have fame, you are happy. If you don't have fame, then you are unhappy. Those 8. And that is what drives our life. We are always either happy or unhappy due to one of those things. Because we are attached to the gaining of the wealth, because we are attached, therefore, when we don't gain, when we lose, we become miserable, unhappy. Because we are attached to the happiness, when we don't have happiness, but instead when we have some pain, suffering, then we become miserable. Because we are attached to fame, and when we don't have fame, then we become miserable. Because we are attached to praise, when people doesn't praise, instead criticize us, then we become miserable. So here the practice is to practice equanimity with all these 8. To practice equanimity with all of those 8. Whether you gain or whether you lose, being happy with that, same. Whether you experience happiness or suffering, being okay, either of them. Being okay and happy with them. Whether someone praise or someone criticize, either of them, being okay with that, being happy with that. Whether you have good reputation, fame, or whether you don't have good reputation, fame, bad reputations, doesn't matter. Being okay with that and practicing equanimity with those 8 is the key for our happiness. Key for our happiness. If we can practice equanimity on all of that, wouldn't our life be much more happier? It doesn't affect whether people praise or criticize. It doesn't affect whether you gain or you lose. It doesn't affect whether you are, physically, sensory, pleasant or unpleasant. Whether you have good reputation or bad reputation, it doesn't affect you. So therefore, your mind is always calm, peaceful, doesn't undisturbed, unagitated, unaffected by those. And when you are able to practice the equanimity with all these 8 worldly concerns, and on the basis of that, without any attachment to the 8 worldly concerns, when you practice the Dharma, then your Dharma practice becomes pure. Then your practice Dharma becomes pure. As long as we have 8 worldly concerns, even when we try to practice the Dharma, still our motivation will be affected with a little bit of 8 worldly concerns. And because of that, our practice does not become so pure as it should be, it can be. Therefore, all the Kadamba masters, we know, when they were asked how to practice the Dharma, how to practice the Dharma, all of them say, all the master says, let go of attachment to this life pleasure. Let go of that attachment. It is said, one time, that Domdemba was the main disciple of Adisha, and so one time Domdemba was going out, and then he saw one of them, trying to do prostrations. One of the disciples or one of the practitioner trying to do prostrations to the monastery and stupa where it was there. And Domdemba told him, it's great that you are prostrating, but it will be even greater if you can practice the Dharma. So he went around, and the man thought, oh, maybe prostrating is not the Dharma, So then he started to do prayers, maybe that is the Dharma. He started to do the prayers, and Domdemba came and then said, wow, you are doing prayers. That is wonderful. That is wonderful. It's wonderful. But it will be even better if you practice the Dharma. And then he saw, oh, maybe praying is not the Dharma. Then he started to meditate, trying to meditate. And then again, Domdemba came and again saw him meditating. And he says, oh, you are meditating. That is wonderful. That's great. But it will be even better if you practice the Dharma. And by that time, he get confused. He didn't know. He did everything that he thought it was Dharma. He did the prostrations, he did the prayers, he did the meditation. Still, the Domdemba was saying, it will be even better if you practice the Dharma. And so at the end, he said, no. So how do I practice the Dharma? Everything that I did was not, it is not Dharma. And he said, let go of attachment to this life, appearance. So that was, and also one of the great Sakya masters say, if you are attached to this life, then you are not true Dharma practitioner. And you can see also in Lama Zopa's teaching, very strongly, So yeah. So one of the reasons why we are unable to practice pure Dharma, one of the reasons why we cannot have a realization, even though we have been studying, even though we have been trying to practice for a while, still we struggle to have a lot of much progress in our spiritual path. The reason why we are still having a kind of obstacles to practice, obstacles to make a progress is because, yes, we are practicing the Dharma to a certain degree, but those practices are not as strong and pure as it can be, because even those practices are contaminated by our worldly concerns to certain degrees. Polluted by the worldly concern for certain degrees. For some time, even when you try to practice and meditate, our practice and meditations is to feel good about ourselves. This moment is the worldly concerns of this life. Or maybe, even when you do some practice, is to relieve our immediate kind of pains if we are sick or if we have obstacles. The reason why we do those practices is to relieve of that obstacle, relief of that suffering. So we are still kind of attached to this life, well-being of this life. So that practice, we do the practice, but it doesn't become pure Dharma. Because we do that practice to overcome the obstacle or our sickness, and because we're attached to our well-being, we're attached to fulfill all our wishes and not have obstacles, So therefore, your motivation to practice become very limited, very narrow. Instead of being, the motivation to practice become for the benefit of all sentient beings, instead of being benefit for all sentient beings, or at least to achieve liberation from the samsara, or minimal level, at least to have a better future life where we can continue to practice again. So, so through meditation on, so when we meditate on impermanence of all of that, then we can, again, one way to practice equanimity towards the eight worldly concern is by meditating on impermanent in general and meditating on that impermanent. Because, if I have a realizations, awareness that I could die tomorrow or I could die today, it wouldn't make much effect. Either I lose or I gain wealth. Do you get it? If I'm 100% sure, or if I'm not 100% sure, but if I have a strong awareness that I could die tomorrow, it doesn't matter whether I lose or gain today from my investment. I'm going to die tomorrow, so what is need of that? Do you get it? Since I'm going to die, whatever I've invested, whether it make a profit or it lose, it wouldn't matter so much to me. But if I'm going to believe that I'm going to live many years, then I would like to have the profit because I need that for that. And same thing, if I'm going to die tomorrow, who matters? Whether someone criticizes me or praise me, it doesn't matter. You can let it go easily. And especially if I'm going to die in a couple of minutes, it doesn't matter whether someone is criticizing, talking bad about me, or someone is saying good about me. So through that, you can come through the meditation on impermanent in general, the impermanent nature of those objects that we're attached to. All of those, the objects that we're attached to are, not lasting, impermanent nature, ever changing, ever decaying nature. And so when you understand that, definitely you will have a less stronger grasping and attachments. And not only the objects are impermanent, but also your life, yourself is also impermanent, that death could come any moment. And so with that practice, then you can let go of the attachment to you can give up eight worldly concern, and you can give up attachment to the pleasure of this life or the appearance of this life, and through the practice of that. So that is where, by gaining familiarity with this, the third lines. So through that meditations, you meditate on precious human rebirth, and then on death impermanence. So when you meditate on that again and again, then you started to gain familiarity with that. You start to get familiar with that practice, that meditations, And once you have that kind of familiarity and strong practice of that, then attraction to the appearance of this life will be reversed. Then you will not be attached to this life, appearance of this life. And if you are not attached to appearance of this life, then definitely your life will be much more happier. And then definitely whatever practice we do will be much more powerful, much more pure, and much more powerful and effective. And whatever practice we do will become a true Dharma, pure Dharma. So I think maybe for today, maybe so I can take a couple of questions if there is any questions or comments. Does anyone?
Yes, I have one.
Yes, please.
This is Sarah.
Yes, Sarah.
Okay, we're talking about the people who are suffering in samsara.
Mm-hmm.
People who are reborn in the God realm are not suffering, though, correct?
Not correct.
Oh,
They are suffering. They don't have physical pain like we have.
yeah.
Okay. Within the God realm, there are many different levels of God realms. There is 6 type of desire God realms, and then there is 12 type of form God realms, and there's 4 type of formless God realms. So, and in desire God realms, there are certain sufferings. The suffering, even though they don't have suffering at the very beginning, but at the end of their life, or suffering like ourselves, like pain, like suffering of what you call the suffering of physical or emotional suffering, like what you call the suffering of pain, the first suffering. But at the time of death, just before they're dead, then they have this sign that they are dying. There are 5 different signs that they are dying. Before they have light, then now their light started to decay. Before they have natural light to their body, their light started to decay. Before they don't have any sweating, now they started to have sweat, and so there are kind of 5 different signs of death. And when that sign comes, then they know their death is coming, and they have a lot of pain. Then they go through a lot of suffering, a lot of pain. And sometimes that suffering and pain is such an unbearable, is much worse than many of the other suffering that we experience. So they have that suffering. And also, some of the God realms and demigod, they fight. They fight. And then in the fighting, then they cut each other's. So again, through that, they have some sufferings in certain God realms. Then after you go into some of the form God realms, then they don't have that kind of suffering. Also, they don't have suffering of change, especially but they still have what we call the suffering of all pervasive, in all these God realms. So what it means is they are also not free from the delusion karma. So they are still, even though they don't have physical pain like us, they don't have emotional pain like us, but still their mind and their life is still under the control of the delusions and karma. So they are still the slave and prisoner of the delusion karma. And that itself is suffering. When you don't have freedom, when your life, even the God realm, they don't have the freedom, still their life is still, so therefore they are still a prisoner and slave of their own delusion karma. That itself is a suffering. So that is what it is. Okay. So therefore, and also because they have no control over their own delusion karma. So then, even though they don't have the suffering of pain and change at the moment, but they could be born in the lower realms next time easily. And then when they are born there, when the karma is exhausted there to be there, and then they experience again suffering in the futures. So yeah. So therefore, that is why when we try to generate renunciations, that we try to generate a renunciation, not being attached to any of the realms or any of the 6 realms, any of the place, the pleasant feelings or pleasure of any of the 6 realms. Instead, we want to try to generate a wish to free from all 6 realms, whole samsara, from all of the 6 realms. Yeah. Is that
Thank
okay?
you. Yes.
Yeah.
I have another question if no one else has one. Does someone else have another question?
No, you can ask.
So I agree that samsara is difficult. It's not a desirable place to be, really. I can agree with that totally. However, we have taken the Bodhisattva vow to come back. So we
Uh-huh.
do not have the luxury of rejecting samsara because we have to come back to help other beings.
That is different. Coming to the world out of compassion and coming to the world because of your karma and delusion, different things. Okay, so it is like that. Even so, here, when we say to develop renunciations towards the samsara, that means we are not attached to samsara. Even you are not attached to samsara because you want to help, you come. Do you get it?
Okay, so there's a different motivation
Yes.
for coming
One
back.
one is because of attachment and one is because of the compassion. And so here, what it is saying is that you shouldn't have attachment to that. You have to let go of the attachment. While you let go of the attachment, but still because you want to help and benefit others, so out of that compassion, you come back.
So when we come back out of compassion, will we still experience suffering as we do now?
It depends on your state of realizations, for example, when you have direct realization and emptiness, then from then you don't have even you might have some suffering of the physical, but you don't have suffering of the mental, the emotions. And then when you achieve arhat, or when you receive the 8 bhumi, then from there on, then you don't experience any physical, emotional pains. But before that, then even you come out of compassion, you can still experience some of the physical pains and emotional pain. But because you have so much compassion, it will not affect so badly as it affects us at the moment. For example, I think when you have so much love and compassion for your child, that compassion is still a little bit attached, kind of mixed with attachment, but still, even though it is not 100% pure compassion, pure compassion will be even more stronger than that. But when you have strong compassion for your child, and because you want to help them, and so even you have to go through some of the hardship, for example, not being able to sleep a lot, as much as we sleep now, because you have to keep on waking up time to time, because the child need to be fed, because the child is crying. So, but while it is a little bit of uncomfortable, but because of your incredible compassion, it still becomes a little bit bearable. You can bear it. But it is not that child, your child, that you have compassion. Someone, your neighbor, is waking you up every 2 hours, 3 hours. It will make you very miserable. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Your mind will start to become so upset and angry, and you will go and complain to your, I don't know, whoever there is complaining. If you have any place to complain, you will complain. My neighbor is not allowing me to sleep. He's making noise every 2 hours. I can't go to sleep. You see the difference? Even the child is crying and waking you up every 2 hours. Still, you don't feel that kind of miserable because your compassion is there. Physically, it is same, but because of your mind state, still you don't feel that physical and emotion is not so unbearable. You can handle, endure that hardship without feeling so miserable. On the other hand, if you don't have that compassion, then it becomes much more miserable. So there is difference. So therefore, when you come out of compassion to help, then that will be, even though physically it might not be so easy, but mentally, emotionally, you can deal with it much better. Yeah. And
Okay,
so
thank
therefore,
you.
less suffering,
Yeah.
less pain. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So then we will do the dedications. Yeah. Due to the merits of this virtuous action, may I quickly attain the
Oh,
state of Guru
thanks.
Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. Chanjo sem chorim boche ma ke pa na ke kyuch ke wa nyam ba me ba ya kong le kong tu pe wa la sho. The wish granting, wish fulfilling Jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparable kind Yaso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Tu tu chang xin chang guan jia wei ten zin zhong bei wei kun su to bu ro zhi chuo sun ku wei le ma tu du ba da so du jie kun du xia pen shu. Venerable One, to you whose kindness exists that of all the conqueror for those who wander in the far off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us in intentionally descending again into the family of far distant land, we make this request, O Lama, please keep long. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank you.
evening. Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Geshe-la.
Geshe-la.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Thank you,
thank you.
Geshe-la.
Night,
Hello,
everyone.
Mark.
Thank you,
Hello, Mark.
Geshe-la.
Thank you.
Thank
Hello,
you,
Mark.
John, for hosting.
Yes. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Geshe-la.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Thank you,
Good
John.
night. Thank
Thanks,
you,
John.
John.
No worries,
Good
Bill,
job.
Patty.
Good job there. Good
Thanks,
job.
mate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, went smooth,
John.
very nice and smooth.
Oh, wow. That's high praise.
Yeah, it was great. Very,
Thank
Thanks,
you
mate.
so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Patty. No.
Hi, how you doing?
Oh, yeah, good. I'm
Good.
enjoying it. Yeah, so very fortunate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
All
Be
right.
well, everybody.
right.
Yes,
Be well.
everybody be well.
Okay.
Good night.
See you guys. I'll
Night.
finish it off. See you guys.
Oh,
Bye.
all right.
See you next
Good night.
week.